Darlington had been pacing through the living room since morning, dropping hints of irritation at every small sound Kamsi made. She had learned, over the years, to sense when he was building up to something unpleasant, but that day his silence felt heavier, colder, deliberate. He paused by the window, pretending to check emails he wasn't actually reading, then finally muttered without looking at her, "I think I need some space. I'm traveling for a few days." The words landed like stones in her stomach. Kamsi lifted her eyes from the throw pillows she was arranging, unsure whether she heard him correctly. This wasn't an argument. They weren't fighting. There had been no misunderstanding, no tension, no disagreement that morning. She watched him zip a small travel bag, a bag he never used unless he wanted to hide where he was going, and something inside her chest tightened. She opened her mouth slowly, intending to ask where and why, but he cut her off sharply with, "Please, Kamsi. Just don't start." That was when she realized the decision had been made long before he told her. He moved through the room with the confidence of someone who felt justified, even victorious, while she stood frozen, unable to understand what she had done wrong. He didn't touch her shoulder, didn't give her a goodbye hug, didn't even pretend to reassure her. The man who once chased her during their early years, who once called her his peace, now avoided her eyes like she was a burden. Kamsi kept watching him from the corner of the sofa, the stiffness in his shoulders, the eagerness in his steps, the unfamiliar cologne he applied before stepping out. He left the house not like a husband temporarily leaving home, but like a man escaping a life he believed was slowing him down. "I'll call you," he said faintly, but the door closed before she could respond. The click of the door felt final, heavier than she could explain. She stood still in the quiet house, inhaling the scent of his new perfume lingering in the air, a scent she had never smelled on him before, and with a sinking heart she knew this was not about stress or needing space. Something deeper was already wrong. 2 hours later, the confirmation came without warning. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from a friend she hadn't spoken to in months. "Kamsi, please don't panic. I think you need to see this." Attached were pictures, bright, sharp, undeniable. Darlington was not alone on his so-called solo trip. He was standing at the airport beside Renelle, the social media influencer known for dramatic wigs and waist-snatching dresses. They were holding hands, laughing, matching outfits, captured by strangers who loved gossip. Kamsi's fingers trembled violently as she scrolled through the images, each one tearing through her chest with a fresh cut. She set the phone down, sat slowly on the edge of the sofa, and folded both hands tightly to keep them from shaking, but the tears still slipped through. She didn't scream. She didn't break anything. She didn't call him. She just sat there in a quiet, suffocating ache, realizing that the man she loved left their home to find joy elsewhere, without hesitation, without guilt, without even giving her the decency of a lie that wasn't so easily exposed. Kamsi tried to distract herself with work, but her hands couldn't stop shaking each time her phone buzzed with another message or another tagged photo. Darlington and Renelle were all over the internet within hours. Videos of them boarding the plane together, clips of them smiling at the resort reception, even a picture Renelle herself posted with the caption, "Soft life with my person." Her person. The phrase stabbed through Kamsi like a nail dragged slowly through the skin. She couldn't understand how a man who once held her at night now held another woman so freely in public. Her chest tightened so badly she pressed a pillow against it, as if trying to hold herself together while watching her marriage collapse digitally. She wasn't even angry yet. She was simply stunned, confused by how quickly Darlington replaced her. For the first 3 days, she forced herself to keep the house moving. She cleaned the kitchen, watered the plants, arranged her design sketches on the table, and pretended to focus. But every corner of the house felt emptier, colder, as though Darlington had taken the light with him when he left. Friends called to ask if she was okay. Some spoke with pity, some with unnecessary sympathy, while others subtly blamed her, suggesting she must have done something to push him away. She stopped answering her calls. She stopped checking social media. She stopped eating properly. Her mind replayed Darlington's departure over and over, his indifference, his new cologne, the way he didn't look back when he exited the door. Each replay felt like another cut. She started questioning herself silently. Was I not enough? Did I miss signs? Was I blind? Did he ever love me at all? That evening, she sat alone on the living room floor, surrounded by her sketch papers, but unable to draw a single straight line. A notification flashed across her screen, a video. She clicked it accidentally, and her heart sank as Darlington appeared on camera, holding Renel's waist while she giggled into his neck. The background music of the resort played softly, and Darlington looked happy, happier than he had been at home in months. Kamsi felt her throat close. She wrapped her arms around herself and leaned back against the wall. Tears slipped quietly, steadily. It wasn't just that he was with someone else, it was that he didn't even look like he missed her. Not even a little. The realization broke something inside her. And for the first time, she whispered to herself, maybe this marriage ended long before today. By the 5th day, Darlington barely responded to her messages, simple, polite texts asking if he arrived safely or needed anything. His replies were cold, one-worded, and spaced many hours apart. Meanwhile, his social pages overflowed with photos and videos of him and Renel doing couple activities he once claimed he hated. Boat rides, themed dinners, matching outfits. The same man who used to grumble when Kamsi begged him to take pictures suddenly transformed into an online Prince Charming for another woman. Every post, every caption, every laughing emoji made it clearer that the man she married was gone, replaced by a version of him she had never known and never would have chosen. Her family noticed her emotional withdrawal when she visited them for a short break. She smiled through questions she didn't want to answer, made excuses for Darlington she didn't believe, and hid her pain behind politeness. But her mother saw through her facade. She held Kamsi's hands gently and asked, "My daughter, when last did he choose you?" The question broke her completely. She cried in her mother's arms without forming words. That night, she slept in her old room and stared at the ceiling until morning, wondering how love could evaporate so silently. She realized she had been loving alone for much longer than she noticed. When she returned home, the silence inside the house felt heavier than before. She walked into their bedroom and inhaled the faint scent of Darlington's cologne lingering on his shirts. Instead of comfort, the smell triggered a wave of nausea. She opened the wardrobe and saw how neatly she had arranged everything, his shirts ironed, his perfumes lined up, his shoes polished, all for a man who didn't even care if she was breathing. Something inside her hardened. For the first time, she opened the wardrobe and removed every item that didn't belong to her. She didn't throw anything away, but she needed the space, the symbolism. If Darlington had already replaced her in his heart, then she needed to start removing him from hers. It was the first small step toward a future she hadn't yet imagined. On the 7th day of the vacation, while Darlington believed he was on top of the world, destiny crowned him with a humiliation he never saw coming. He had just taken 2 cocktails from a bar and was walking back to the private cabana where he left Renel. He imagined surprising her with sweet words and pictures they could post. But halfway there, he noticed shadows inside the cabana, movements too intimate to be innocent. When he stepped closer, his heart dropped. Renel was straddling Luca, the tour guide, kissing him deeply, passionately, with a hunger she never once showed Darlington. Their hands roamed freely. Her nails dug into Luca's neck. They didn't even pause when Darlington shouted her name. What made the betrayal worse wasn't the act, it was Renel's reaction. She pulled away from Luca slowly, turned to Darlington with a bored expression, and said loudly, "Oh, you're back." Her tone carried no guilt, no fear, no shame. Resort guests turned their heads. Some began recording. Darlington, shaking, lunged at Luca like a wounded animal, but Luca grabbed his wrist mid-air and pinned him down effortlessly. Sand filled Darlington's mouth as he screamed Renel's name. Instead of helping him, she stepped aside and declared boldly, "Please, Darlington, don't embarrass yourself. You left your wife for me. You thought you were the only one allowed to enjoy freedom." Laughter erupted from nearby tourists. Cameras zoomed in. Someone shouted, "Karma Sweeto." Another yelled, "Influencer Don serve him breakfast." Darlington fought to get up, but Luca shoved him back down with one arm. Humiliation spreading across the resort like wildfire. Rinelle fixed her wig, gave Luca a satisfied smile, and walked away with him, holding hands, as Darlington cried and choked on sand behind them. The videos hit social media within minutes. And while he was still sobbing angrily under the hot sun, his name was already trending online as one of the year's biggest moo-moo of love. The next morning, Darlington woke to a nightmare that technology magnified to its highest form. His disgrace had gone viral. Memes of him being pinned down by Luca spread everywhere. Twitter users mocked him brutally. Influencer blogs dissected the cheating scene from every angle. Strangers recreated the incident for fun. His workplace issued a subtle statement distancing themselves from the unfortunate conduct of their staff. His friends, who once praised him, disappeared. Rinelle had blocked him on all platforms. It felt as if Nigeria united solely to laugh at his downfall. Meanwhile, back home, Kamsi was finally experiencing an emotional shift she didn't expect. At first, she avoided opening the viral videos, refusing to feed on someone else's humiliation, even if it belonged to a man who broke her heart. But eventually, the volume of messages forced her to look. When she saw Darlington on the ground screaming while Rinelle mocked him openly, she didn't feel joy. She didn't feel pity either. She simply felt released, like a burden she had been carrying for years dissolved on its own without her lifting a finger. The betrayal stung, but the universe had clearly fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. Unexpectedly, that same day, she received a message from a hotel chain executive she once worked for. He invited her to lead a prestigious international redesign project across multiple African countries. The timing felt divine. While Darlington's world was collapsing publicly, Kamsi's was quietly rising. She accepted the offer with trembling hands, realizing fate had opened a door right when another slammed shut. Her new journey had already begun, and she didn't need Darlington to witness it for it to be real. She only needed to walk through it and never look back. Darlington refused to leave the resort immediately after the humiliation. He stayed locked inside his room for hours, replaying the scene in his mind until it felt like knives twisting inside his chest. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Luca's hands pinning him, saw Rinelle walking away with another man, heard the laughter of strangers echoing through the walls. His phone vibrated non-stop with messages, but none of them were comforting. His colleagues sent sarcastic jokes disguised as concern. Old friends sent laughing emojis. Even people he hadn't spoken to in years resurfaced solely to mock him. He smashed his phone against the wall in frustration, but the shame still consumed him. His reflection in the mirror stared back at him, a broken, disrespected man who once believed he was smarter, stronger, and more desirable than his own wife. He tried reaching Rinelle, messaging her across all platforms, calling repeatedly, even begging through voice notes he never imagined he could send. But she blocked him everywhere. The resort staff avoided him politely, whispering whenever he passed by. The same people who smiled at him on his first day now watched him like he carried bad luck in his suitcase. When he finally stepped outside to breathe, a group of Nigerian tourists pointed at him, whispering, "Now this guy influencer girl embarrass." One woman even walked up and said, "Oga, go home. You done chop breakfast finish." The humiliation was complete, not because of the cheating alone, but because the entire world had witnessed it. At sunset, he walked along the shore alone, kicking at the sand as waves slapped angrily against the rocks. The ocean breeze couldn't cool the heat of shame burning under his skin. It dawned on him, painfully, heavily, that he had destroyed everything for a woman who didn't even value him. As he sat by the water with his head buried in his hands, he realized he had betrayed the only person who ever chose him sincerely, Kamsi. But the realization didn't bring clarity. It brought panic. He wasn't ready to face what he had done, nor the consequences waiting for him back home. Yet, he knew he couldn't stay in Zanzibar another night. Running away wouldn't save him. Returning home wouldn't save him either. But somewhere deep inside, he felt he had already lost the one thing he didn't know he needed until this moment, his wife. While Darlington was sinking into shame, Kamsi experienced one of the most unexpected turning points of her life. She was sitting at her dining table, absent-mindedly scrolling through color palettes for a client when her phone rang. The caller ID displayed a name she recognized immediately, Chief Boega, the CEO of a luxury hotel chain she worked with years earlier. Her heart skipped. She answered with a composed voice, though her hands trembled slightly. He spoke warmly, praising her recent works he had seen online, and then he said the words that made her sit upright. "I want you to lead the redesign of all 10 of our branches across Africa. Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, Senegal, all yours if you want them." For a moment, she couldn't speak. The project was massive, prestigious, and career-defining. Every designer in her field dreamed of an opportunity like this. She swallowed her emotions and asked for details. He explained the structure, the timeline, the travel arrangements, and his confidence in her ability to deliver world-class aesthetics. As he spoke, Kamsi felt her chest expand with a fulfillment she hadn't felt in years, not from love, not from marriage, but from recognizing her own worth. When the call ended, she placed her phone on the table and exhaled deeply. For the first time since Darlington left, she felt something unfamiliar, relief. And beneath that relief, the faint spark of hope. She walked to her mirror and looked at her reflection. The woman staring back at her looked tired, bruised emotionally, but still standing, still capable, still worthy of more than she had been given. Her acceptance email was short and professional, but when she pressed send, her entire future shifted. She felt it in her bones. As she packed her sketchbooks, selected fabrics, and organized her travel essentials, she wasn't running away from heartbreak. She was running toward purpose. She didn't even tell anyone immediately. She simply prepared in silence, allowing herself to rise slowly, quietly, beautifully. And in that quietness, she realized something. Darlington's betrayal didn't break her. It released her from a cage she didn't know she had outgrown. By the time the sun set, Kamsi knew that whatever came next would no longer revolve around a man who chose someone else. It would revolve around the woman she was becoming. Kamsi boarded her first flight to Ghana with a strange mix of nerves and courage swirling inside her. She wasn't running away. She was stepping into a version of herself she had forgotten existed. As the plane ascended, she stared out the window, watching Lagos shrink below her. For years, her life revolved around maintaining peace in a rocky marriage. Now, she felt something rare, freedom. Real, unfiltered freedom. She closed her eyes and whispered a small prayer for strength, not to forgive Darlington, not to fix anything, but to remain grounded as she walked into her new reality. In Ghana, she was immediately immersed in work. The hotel's architecture team welcomed her warmly, impressed by her quiet confidence and sharp design instincts. She toured the property, sketched rapidly, analyzed spaces with eyes that saw possibilities rather than limitations. Every step she took, every decision she made reminded her that she had not been losing her value. She had been investing it in the wrong person. The more she worked, the more she rediscovered her fire. When she submitted her preliminary concepts to the board, their applause filled the room. One executive even said, "This is brilliance, pure brilliance." Kamsi smiled, not because of praise, but because she finally believed it. Evenings in Ghana were peaceful. She sat on her hotel balcony, legs tucked under her, sipping hibiscus tea while overlooking the city lights. She felt lighter each day, the ache in her chest slowly fading. Darlington had not called. He hadn't messaged. He hadn't apologized. But strangely, she didn't care anymore. The silence between them was no longer painful. It was necessary. She didn't know what her future held, but she knew she was no longer waiting for a man who walked away without hesitation. And for the first time, she felt genuinely grateful for the distance he created, because it carved a path that led her exactly where she was meant to be. On her 9th day in Ghana, during a meeting to finalize design layouts, Kamsi was introduced to the lead project architect, Adilu Adeyemi. Tall, calm, sharply dressed, and radiating a gentle confidence that filled the room without effort. He extended a hand to her and said, "I've heard a lot about your work. I've been looking forward to meeting you." His voice carried no flirtation, no ego, just sincerity. Kamsi shook his hand politely, but something about his presence made her heart settle, as if she had stepped into a space where respect lived naturally. As they worked together through blueprints, site measurements, and budget meetings, Adilu consistently deferred to her creative direction. He listened attentively, asked thoughtful questions, and admired her designs without exaggeration. His calmness contrasted sharply with the emotional turbulence she had escaped. During their first on-site review, he paused beside her and said, "You see the world differently. It's refreshing." The compliment wasn't romantic, it was appreciative. It made her feel seen professionally, and in a way she hadn't felt even in her marriage. Soon, they developed an effortless rhythm. They laughed over minor construction mishaps, shared lunch breaks, and exchanged stories about work challenges. Kamsi found herself surprisingly comfortable around him. There was no pressure, no tension, just ease. He never asked about her personal life, never crossed boundaries, never tried to impress her with empty words. Instead, he spoke with wisdom and observed more than he talked. For the first time in years, Kamsi realized she could exist around a man without shrinking herself. She didn't know where fate was leading, but she recognized one truth. Safety had a sound, and it sounded like Adila's voice saying, "You did incredibly well today." 2 weeks later, while finalizing drawings in her Ghana apartment, Kamsi received an email from an international design magazine. They wanted to feature her as Africa's new visionary in modern interiors. She reread the message 3 times before the reality sank in. Her name, her work, her story, amplified on a global platform. When she received the digital cover mock-up later that evening, she burst into silent tears. Not from sadness, not from heartbreak, but from the overwhelming realization that she had risen beautifully, quietly, powerfully, without anyone's validation except her own. The cover hit the internet the next morning, and social media erupted instantly. Old acquaintances who ignored her during her marital struggles reposted it proudly. Clients who once doubted her now flooded her inbox with praise. Even acquaintances from her university reached out to tell her how inspired they were. Meanwhile in Lagos, Darlington saw the cover while sitting alone in a noisy airport, waiting for a flight home he no longer felt ready to take. His heart dropped. The woman he left, the woman he betrayed, the woman he assumed would crumble in his absence, was being hailed as a rising star across Africa. He felt something tighten in his chest, regret wrapped in fear. As the comments about her brilliance grew, Darlington experienced a painful truth. Kamsi didn't just survive without him. She excelled. She glowed. She thrived. His shame deepened, not because he wanted her back, but because he realized she never needed him in the first place. And for the first time since the scandal, he felt real fear, the fear of facing her after everything he had done. Darlington's return flight to Lagos was the longest journey of his life. He sat stiffly in his economy seat, head bowed, sunglasses covering his swollen eyes, replaying the humiliating scenes from Zanzibar. Each replay stabbed him deeper. The laughter of strangers. Rinel walking away with Luca. Tourists pointing cameras at him like he was an exhibit. Even on the plane, he overheard Nigerians whispering about the viral video. Someone behind him murmured, "Now that guy way influencer served breakfast for beach." He felt his lungs tighten from embarrassment. When the plane landed, he waited until almost everyone had disembarked before stepping out, hoping to avoid more stares. But humiliation wasn't something he could outrun. Even the airport staff recognized him. A security officer snickered and said, "Guy, sorry, women matter tough." Darlington didn't respond. He simply dragged his luggage forward, feeling smaller with each step. The drive home was suffocating. Lagos streetlights flickered past the window as memories of Kamsi began to surface. Her calm voice, her soft routines, her gentle reminders, the meals she always made sure he ate, the quiet warmth she provided without demanding anything in return. He felt something pierce him. Guilt. Raw, unfamiliar guilt. He gripped the steering wheel tighter and muttered, "I need to apologize. She'll understand." But deep inside, fear gnawed at him. He didn't know what version of Kamsi he would meet. He didn't know if she would even still be there. He had treated her carelessly, abandoned her without explanation, humiliated her publicly by choosing another woman. Now he had nothing left, no dignity, no pride, no side chick, no reputation. Only the wife he hoped would somehow forgive him. When he finally arrived at their building, he sat inside the car for several minutes, breathing heavily. His heart thudded painfully. He imagined walking in, collapsing into her arms, confessing everything. He imagined she would cry, but eventually soften. He imagined the comfort of an old love waiting to welcome him back. He needed her now more than ever. With shaky hands, he picked up his suitcase, climbed the stairs slowly, and whispered a small prayer under his breath. Please let her still be here. Please. But the moment he opened the bedroom door, all the fantasies shattered violently. Because standing in the center of the room, folding the last of her clothes into a suitcase, was Kamsi, not crying, not frantic, not emotional. She was done. The sight of Kamsi packing hit Darlington with the force of a speeding car. His breath left his lungs. For a moment, he simply stood at the doorframe staring at her, unable to process what he was seeing. Kamsi, what are you doing? He asked, voice cracking. She didn't flinch. She zipped the bag and placed it upright beside two others. Her composure terrified him. He expected anger, tears, shouting, anything familiar. But what he saw was something far worse. A woman who had already detached. A woman he no longer had access to. With calm clarity, she picked up her purse. I'm leaving Darlington, she said. There was no emotion in her tone. Just finality. Darlington's knees weakened. Panic shot through him like electricity. Leaving to where? Why? I can explain everything. But the truth suffocated him. What was there to explain? Every detail of his betrayal was already public. Kamsi slid her laptop into its sleeve and didn't look at him once. I'm done, she said simply. Those two words cracked him open. He stumbled toward her, arms extended as if reaching for stability. Kamsi, please. Don't do this. I made a mistake. I was confused. I didn't know. She raised her palm gently to silence him, but the gesture wasn't disrespectful. It was weary. Darlington, the day you packed your bag and walked out without even looking at me. That was the day you chose your life. I'm choosing mine now. Her tone wasn't angry, it was resolved. And that frightened him more than any rage could have. His legs trembled as desperation swallowed all the pride he once carried. Please don't leave me, he whispered, voice breaking. But Kamsi continued packing quietly, her breathing steady. She had cried enough. Suffered enough, waited enough. Her heart had already slipped away from him. Darlington's panic grew wild. He began pacing the room, running his hands through his hair, muttering incoherently. He couldn't accept this. He wasn't ready. He needed her. He spun toward her suddenly and shouted, Kamsi, I will not let you leave this house. His voice shook the room. But even then, she did not flinch. She turned to him with eyes neither angry nor scared, simply done. Darlington, she said softly, you left this marriage long before I decided to pack. Those words stripped him of whatever was left of his ego. He collapsed onto the edge of the bed, covering his face, trembling from the fear of losing a woman he never appreciated until now. But it was already too late. Her heart was gone. Darlington's desperation spiraled into chaos. When Kamsi lifted her suitcase, intending to pull it toward the door, he rushed forward and snatched it from her grip violently. You're not leaving me, he roared. He dragged the suitcase back inside and kicked it under the bed. Then, in a panic-filled frenzy, he locked the bedroom door and pocketed the key. Kamsi inhaled deeply, refusing to be intimidated. Darlington, open the door, she said calmly. I don't want trouble. But her composure only agitated him more. He began pacing wildly, blocking her path each time she tried to move. No, you're not walking out of here. You can't abandon me, she frowned, shocked at the audacity. You abandoned me first, she said quietly. And you didn't even look back. Her words ignited him. Stop saying that. Stop, he shouted, slamming his fist against the wall so hard it startled even him. Kamsi reached for her phone to call building security, But Darlington lunged and snatched it from her hand, hurling it across the room. The phone hit the wardrobe with a loud crack. At that moment, her silence broke, not into fear, but into a voice firm enough to cut through his madness. "Darlington, open this door, or I will scream." He shook his head violently. "You're not going anywhere," he repeated, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his temples. It was the first time he had ever raised his voice like this at her, and the last time she would tolerate it. The struggle grew loud, thuds, arguments, frantic footsteps. The noise traveled through the walls. Within minutes, neighbors gathered outside the apartment door, banging urgently. "Darlington, open this door," someone shouted. "Is everything okay in there?" another voice demanded. The banging intensified. "If you don't open, we'll break it," a man yelled. In that moment, Darlington's face lost all color. He hadn't realized how loud their confrontation had become. Kamsi moved past him calmly, unlocked the door with a spare key hidden behind her shoe rack, and stepped aside as neighbors burst into the hallway. Their faces changed instantly when they saw her, shaken but composed, and Darlington standing there drenched in sweat, looking like a man who had completely lost control. When the neighbors entered, the tension in the air almost choked the hallway. 3 women, 2 older men, and the building's security guard rushed inside. They didn't need explanations. The broken phone, the overturned suitcase, Darlington's wild eyes, Kamsi's quiet firmness. Everything told its own story. "Madam, are you okay?" one woman asked gently. Kamsi nodded weakly. "I just need to leave," she said. Darlington stepped forward angrily. "Nobody is leaving this house," he barked. The security guard immediately moved between them, raising a stern hand. "Olga Darlington, calm down. Don't disgrace yourself further." But Darlington kept shaking his head, tears streaming uncontrollably. "She can't go. Please. She can't." The elderly man who lived upstairs placed a firm hand on Darlington's shoulder. "Young man, let this woman leave in peace," he said. "Don't repeat the mistake that already destroyed your respect online." The reminder of his global embarrassment hit Darlington like a fresh slap. He staggered backward, chest heaving, hands trembling. Meanwhile, 2 women helped Kamsi pick up her scattered belongings. She held her purse tightly and said softly, "Thank you." As she walked toward the door, Darlington sank to his knees in the middle of the living room, crying so loudly the sound echoed down the stairwell. "Kamsi, please. Don't leave me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please don't go." But she didn't look back. Not once. She walked out with dignity, neighbors forming a protective circle around her. As they escorted her down the stairs, Darlington crawled to the doorway, clutching the frame, sobbing broken words. "Kamsi, please. I need you. I can't do this without you." His voice cracked until it was barely audible. But Kamsi kept walking, and with each step she took away from him, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. That night, Kamsi booked a quiet serviced apartment across town. She sat on the bed, legs folded beneath her, staring at the ceiling as a heavy calm settled over her spirit. No tears came, no shaking, no panic, just clarity. She knew the marriage was over the moment Darlington left without looking back. Today only confirmed the final closing of that chapter. She sent a message to her lawyer to begin her separation process, then placed her broken phone aside and exhaled slowly. The silence of the room wrapped around her like a warm blanket. For the first time in months, she slept deeply, uninterrupted, untroubled, unbroken. Meanwhile, Darlington sat alone in their living room, hands shaking, eyes swollen, surrounded by the mess from the confrontation. He replayed everything, her calm voice, her departure, the neighbors' judgmental stares. The weight of his actions crushed him. For the first time, he saw himself clearly. A man who destroyed the only stable thing in his life. He wanted to call her, but shame held him hostage. He wanted to apologize, but he didn't know where to begin. He reached for her pillow, buried his face in it, and sobbed until exhaustion knocked him out on the cold floor. At dawn, neighbors whispered about the chaos of the previous night. Some said Kamsi had finally freed herself. Others said Darlington needed serious help. But one truth spread through the compound. Campsie left with her dignity intact, while Darlington remained a shell of himself. That morning, when sunlight entered the room and touched the empty side of their bed, Darlington felt a pain he had never experienced before, the pain of knowing she was gone, and this time, she would not be coming back. While Darlington drowned in shame and loneliness in Lagos, Rennell was learning the true cost of playing with hearts. Luca had entertained her only because she offered attention and temporary excitement, not because he wanted any form of commitment. When they returned from the resort outing together, Luca grew cold. He stopped replying to her messages, avoided meeting her outside the resort, and later told her bluntly, "You're not my type. I don't date drama." His words sliced deeper than she expected. She had imagined herself desirable, irreplaceable, empowered. Yet Luca discarded her with less emotion than he would give to dropping a used napkin. Humiliation washed through her, but she tried to salvage dignity by recording a vlog defending herself. Unfortunately, the internet had already moved on, and not in her favor. Brands that previously sponsored her content pulled out instantly. Her management sent her a termination message, stating that her recent conduct did not align with their corporate image. Even her followers, who once praised her glamorous lifestyle, turned against her. Some insulted her appearance, others dragged her for chasing men like small chops, and many mocked her for losing both Darlington and Luca in the same week. Rennell attempted damage control by posting a tearful apology video, but it only fueled more ridicule. She spiraled into a quiet depression, unable to leave her hotel room. Her phone buzzed endlessly with insults, and for the first time, she dreaded being online. She had destroyed a married man's life and lost everything in return: endorsement deals, followers, friendships, and the illusion of importance. She tried reaching out to Darlington to rekindle what they shared, but he didn't respond. Pride kept him silent, and shame kept him hidden. She messaged him several times, pretending to be concerned. "Can we talk? I'm sorry about everything. We can fix this." But Darlington didn't reply. Her calls went unanswered. The man she once mocked now wanted nothing to do with her. She had not only lost him, she lost the reputation she built for years. With no income, no support, and no one to blame but herself, Rennell finally understood one crushing truth. Karma doesn't miss deadlines. It arrives exactly when ego blinds its victims the most. Darlington tried to return to normal life, but there was no normal left. His workplace invited him to a disciplinary meeting, whispering about reputational damage. Colleagues stared at him like a walking scandal. His boss, who once praised him, now avoided eye contact and spoke curtly. He was placed on leave pending further review, which he knew was code for, "Your career is hanging by a thread." His bank account was draining quickly, and anxiety clenched his stomach every day. He lost weight rapidly. Nights were the hardest. Silence pressed against his chest until he felt like he couldn't breathe. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Campsie walking away with calm dignity while he cried like a child in front of the entire compound. The memory haunted him. In desperation, he tried calling her, but she never picked up. He texted long, rambling apologies filled with promises he couldn't keep. "Please talk to me. We can fix this. I've changed. I'm sorry." But she never answered. His messages delivered, but remained unread. That silence tortured him more than any insult online. He began stalking her social pages obsessively, watching her new life unfold like a movie he wasn't part of. When he saw a picture of her reviewing architectural plans beside Adielu, the calm, confident architect, something inside him snapped. Jealousy clawed at his throat. He zoomed into the picture repeatedly, shaking with rage. "Who is this man?" he muttered. He convinced himself Campsie had moved on too quickly, forgetting he was the one who abandoned her first. In a haze of foolishness, he showed up unannounced at one of her project sites. Campsie wasn't there, but Adielu was, and the encounter ended in more humiliation. When Darlington confronted him, chest puffed, hands trembling, Adielu simply said, "Walk away, Darlington. This is not your territory anymore." His calmness felt like a slap. Darlington tried raising his voice, but workers around them stepped forward, ready to defend Adielu without hesitation. Darlington realized he was alone again. He left the site, dragging his shame behind him. Later that night, he sat in his empty living room with the lights off, whispering to himself, like someone slowly losing grip on reality. I need her back. I need her. But the truth stood firm. The woman he wanted back had already stepped into a life far beyond his reach. Kamsi adapted beautifully to her new life across Africa. Each country brought new experiences, new inspirations, new opportunities to shine. From the clay-toned buildings of Kigali to the vibrant greenery of Accra, her creativity soared with every project she touched. She became known for her calm, graceful leadership, and her designs attracted industry-wide admiration. The woman who once folded into herself to survive a failing marriage was now expanding, thriving, glowing in ways she never imagined. And the more she grew, the further away Darlington felt in her heart. There were days she remembered the pain, but it no longer anchored her. She felt lighter, happier, anchored in purpose. Her friendship with Adila deepened naturally, beautifully. He respected her in a way that didn't demand anything. He didn't rush her healing. He didn't intrude. He simply existed beside her as a steady, grounded presence. Sometimes they worked late into the night on design proposals, laughing over minor mistakes or teasing each other gently. Other times, they took quiet evening walks discussing architecture and dreams. Kamsi noticed the softness in his eyes when he looked at her, but he never crossed boundaries. He moved at her pace. He honored her pace. And that alone made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in years. One evening in Kigali, after a long presentation, Adila walked her to her hotel door. Before she entered, he said, "You don't owe anyone your pain. You don't owe anyone your past. You are allowed to be happy again." The words sank into her deeply, not as romantic seduction, but as healing truth. She smiled, a slow, heartfelt smile. "Thank you," she whispered. When she closed her door behind her, she leaned back against it, realizing that life had finally given her what she longed for all along, a space where she could exist without breaking. And she wasn't ready to love yet, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of it anymore. Darlington's decline accelerated in brutal speed. His job contract was terminated. His workplace email was disabled. Bills piled up on his table. Rumors spread that he had become unstable, and even his relatives kept their distance. The landlord, tired of late rent payments, issued a warning. Darlington begged for time, but the landlord simply said, "Oga, sorry, oh. Respect yourself. This house is not charity." Days turned into nights filled with sleeplessness. He walked around like a shadow, haunting his own home. Depression folded around him like a thick blanket he couldn't push off. He ate poorly, bathed irregularly, and disconnected from the world. The man who once strutted proudly beside an influencer was now hiding from neighbors to avoid shame. One night, he finally gathered the courage to send Kamsi a long voicemail. His voice broke repeatedly. "Kamsi, please. I am not okay. I need you. I swear I will change. Please just talk to me." He waited for a reply that never came. He watched her Instagram updates obsessively, and when he saw a photo of her smiling beside Adielu during an award event, the realization hit him harder than heartbreak. She was gone. Not physically, not emotionally. She was gone spiritually. Her life no longer revolved around him, his drama, or his validation. He had become irrelevant in her story. He sank into his couch and cried until his chest hurt. He wasn't crying because he loved her. That love came too late. He was crying because he finally understood that he destroyed the only good thing that ever happened to him. No cheating scandal, no influencer betrayal, no job loss hurt as much as the truth that he had lost the woman who once loved him with sincerity. The final blow came when he saw her awarded as African Interior Visionary of the Year. Watching her stand on stage, radiant and unstoppable, shattered him completely. He whispered to himself, "She doesn't need me." She never did. And for the first time, Darlington accepted defeat, heavy, permanent, and deserved. The award ceremony in Lagos was a defining moment in Kamsi's life. The hall glowed with warm lights, rich African art pieces, and industry professionals from across the continent. Kamsi arrived in a simple yet breathtaking gown, elegance flowing effortlessly from her presence. Cameras flashed, reporters rushed forward, and applause filled the room as she took her seat beside Adielu, who smiled at her with quiet pride. When her category was announced, and her name echoed through the speakers, she felt tears sting her eyes, not from sadness, but from gratitude for how far she had come. She walked to the stage gracefully, receiving standing ovations along the way. Her acceptance speech was heartfelt and powerful. She spoke about growth, resilience, rediscovering purpose, and finding beauty in rebuilding broken pieces. She never mentioned Darlington. She didn't need to. Her success spoke for itself. "We rise," she said in her final line, "not because life spares us pain, but because pain pushes us toward who we are meant to be." The entire room erupted in applause. Adielu stood at the edge of the stage, his eyes soft, steady, hopeful. Kamsi walked toward him afterward, their hands brushing gently, a hint of a future her heart was now ready to consider. Meanwhile, in a dim, tiny rented room across town, Darlington watched the awards ceremony from an old laptop. The light from the screen illuminated his tear-streaked face. He touched the image of her frozen on the screen and broke down completely. "I'm sorry," he whispered into the empty room, voice trembling. But apologies, sent into silence, have no audience. His sorrow no longer had a destination. He had become a spectator in the life of a woman he once took for granted. The story ends where it began, not with heartbreak, but with transformation. Kamsi rose beyond betrayal, beyond pain, beyond limitations. Darlington faced the consequences of choices he made with arrogance. Rinell learned the cost of pride and manipulation. And life moved forward, carrying Kamsi into a future where her happiness no longer depended on anyone who couldn't protect it. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching to the end. Don't forget to come back for the next amazing tale yet.